You can see that most of the controls in the REDD 3751 plugin are the same as in the REDD 17. Since I covered them previously, I'll just recap here before looking at what's new. Once again, you have a gain control where you dial up the degree of analog warmth you want from the virtual circuitry, and an output fader, which again is really just a simple makeup gain control and doesn't contribute to the character of the plugin. You have the same metering for reference with the same default calibration of -18 dBFS equals 0 VU, which is, once again, user adjustable. The analog knob adds a little noise or hum, again, for hyperrealism if you want that. And there's the channel control, CH, for choosing either of the two different model channels from the original consoles. The stereo functions, as I went through last time, are the same for all the REDD models. But in the EQ section, things are a little different. The bass lift control is still the same as in the REDD 17, a 10 dB pad or a 9 dB bass boost below 100 Hz. But the high and low tone controls have a wider range, plus or minus 10 dB, instead of plus or minus 6 dB, as in the 17. This is enough of a difference to make this EQ much more capable of stronger tonal variations. Besides the greater gain range, the 3751 EQ has an option to switch between what are labeled pop and classical curves. The classical curve offers traditional shelving response at 10 kHz and 100 Hz. Switching to the pop curves, the biggest difference is that the high-frequency boost becomes a peaking EQ, centered at around 4 to 5 kHz, what nowadays we'd call the presence range, a curve similar to the one designed into many vocal microphones. The high-frequency cut, though, retains the same shelving response as in the classical mode, although with a curve that extends just a little further into the mid-range. Likewise, while the low-frequency EQ doesn't change as drastically between pop and classical, the shelving curves in pop mode also seem to extend a little more into the mid-range, once again, for a slightly more aggressive EQ characteristic. In the original consoles, this was undoubtedly done to keep the different factions at Abbey Road happy. The more traditionalist classical engineers would have taken a minimalist approach to signal processing, and the pop engineers, especially the Beatles engineers, who were always looking for more extreme sonic adjustments. Even by modern standards, the curves they settled on were well chosen, and make it easy to dial up presence, clarity, or fullness without too much fiddling. And while I've been focusing on the controls themselves, don't forget that these are models of circuits chock full of tubes and transformers, so even subtle applications are adding a small bit of desirable analog warmth, which accumulates as the plugins are used on multiple channels. But probably the most significant difference here in the REDD 3751 is the choice of amplifier circuits. You can see under amp type the options for REDD 37, which still used the same Siemens V72 tube or valve amps as the REDD 17, and REDD 51, which instead utilized the then new in-house designed REDD 47 amps, which promised lower distortion and better headroom. With the drive control set at the default -6 dB, the differences between these are subtle. Both add a little of that nice analog presence to the signal when levels are pushed with the gain control. But increase the drive level, and they reveal the distinctly different overdrive characteristics of the Siemens V72 and the REDD 47 amps. It's a well-established bit of trivia that the fuzzed-out guitar sound on the introduction to the Beatles song Revolution was achieved by sending the guitar direct into a REDD console and cranking the console gain. The year that was recorded, this would probably have been the REDD 51, but either of the modeled plug-in versions here is equally capable of this kind of analog grit, in addition to their more common applications of warming up modern, pristine digital tracks. Coming up, I'll move on to the next step in this virtual analog chain, the Studer J37 4-track recorder.